Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
Well, never really in question, and it never should have been. He is Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker with you after each and every game as Tennessee does beat Akron 63-6. Let's break it down with a report card and Caleb's takeaways from the game. I want to remind you, please like, subscribe, and share. We would greatly appreciate that so that we can spread the word. All in all, Caleb Calhoun, and we will get to the message board posters, so go ahead and get on board. We would love to hear from you. All in all, Caleb, Tennessee did what they were supposed to. I said there were 2 goals in this game, maybe 3 if you want to add another one. Win easily, avoid injury, and play clean. They did win easily, as we knew they would, barring something insane. And then the second part of that, avoiding injury, kind of, sort of, with Cedric Tillman had to come out of the game. Jabari Small had to come out of the game. But it appears that everybody is going to be fine. We'll see if they're nagging injuries there. The last was playing clean. Not every game is 100% clean. But for the most part, I thought Tennessee played in an A-level football game. Your thoughts?
To a degree, I think there were a couple of things. I agree. I don't think the injuries with Tillman and Small were that big of a deal. He was a little more mum on Tyler Barron, and that's a little more of a concern because Tyler Barron is becoming as crucial to the pass rush as Byron Young on the other side. So we'll have to see what happens there. As far as clean, I agree. They mostly play clean. I think the only thing that they would need to clean up is, once again, the penalties. They had 11 penalties for 118 yards. I think Brew McCoy had 2 offensive pass interferences in the game. Both of Akron's trips to the red zone were helped out by a holding penalty by Jalen McCullough on one, and then a pass interference by Trayvon Flowers on the other. So both safeties committed a penalty to put them in the red zone. Now the defense, in one of them, forced a fumble that, you could call the whole bend but don't break thing, which I don't know your philosophy on that. I appreciate the concept of bend but don't break defense, but I do also believe that if you keep bending, you're going to break eventually.
Well, I would have totally agreed with you 5 years ago. I think that's the nature of college football because the way rules are nowadays. I just don't know, other than Georgia or Alabama a couple years ago, I don't know that you're going to go out there and have a dominating defense. Now, Tyler Barron, I believe, came back in the game in the second half, so I was surprised to see that. I didn't see anything after that point, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I didn't even notice him come back in the game. I got to go back and look at that, but well,
well, he did come back in the game. I was surprised to see that they even put him back in the game. But, Tennessee clearly got a few more nicks and bruises, however severe, than they wanted to. And the Tillman one was the one that really scared me. And we're going to get to the actual football here, but let's face it, getting out of that without injuries is really what it's all about. You'd rather win that game. You'd rather win that game by 3 points than suffer an injury to Cedric Tillman and win by 120. I mean,
exactly. And this is exactly why Tennessee removed Army from the schedule. This was supposed to be Army in this week instead of Akron. And I think rightly Tennessee remembers what happened with Air Force in 2006 when and that was a game where you're playing, you blow out Cal the first week and then you got Florida the next week. And in between, you've got this service academy that is very disciplined and runs the triple option. And what happens in that game? Justin Harrell, for our younger viewers, Justin Harrell was a star defensive tackle on that team, suffers a season-ending injury. And then Inky Johnson suffers a tragic injury that's career-ending where he can't play football again. And he was their top corner that year. And that happened the week before Florida. And so you're right. The biggest thing is getting out of here without any serious injuries. And you're right, none of them look serious. I will say that. I don't know how I missed Tyler Barron not coming back in the game. I would maybe I feel like I just assumed they wouldn't put him back in the game because it was in such
I
good
didn't
hands.
think they would either. I was really surprised. And yeah, that Air Force game was eventful. That ended up resulting in me being suspended for the Alabama game and winning Employee of the Month at the Knoxville News Sentinel. But it's not about me.
Nice little plug.
Yeah, it's not about me. So, all right, let's look at Hendon Hooker. Now, so I'm trying to grade Hendon Hooker, and the report cards are up now on offthehooksports.com. And Caleb, I'm trying my best to be fair when I look at the stat line. I still think Hendon Hooker has some accuracy issues down the field. I still think he missed some guys, but in the end, I'm thinking about giving him a B, and I said no. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and go ahead. Not that he cares, but I'm going to say that that's just an A stat line when you're 14 of 18 and 298 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, I could point out the throws that he missed and the passes that went long, but gosh, Caleb, I mean, I can't look at that stat line and give him anything but an A.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard, and I mean, this is the thing that is so annoying about judging these type of games when you play a team like Akron. Because I'm with you. There was another clear touchdown. I feel like I say this once a week. There's a touchdown pass to Cedric Tillman that Hooker just missed, and this was before Tillman got hurt.
Well, and the one Hyatt was the touchdown pass to Hyatt was really underthrown as well.
That is true. That's true. Hyatt was just so wide open.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago I could have completed that pass before I blew my shoulder out, but I look at Tennessee's football team, and I think they did end up taking care of business. And this is a team that Akron's really, really bad. I think if Tennessee wanted to come out and they said your lives depend on it, you have to score 100 points, I think they probably could have. Any other takeaways? But we'll start to get to some comments. Go ahead and fill up the message board if you have thoughts on the Tennessee game. Again, a big win for Tennessee. And I did run across an interesting stat before I kind of set you up for some takeaways here, because let me pull this up. I thought this was pretty impressive as the find it here. My apologies. Okay, 676 yards Saturday against Akron. That how many times has Tennessee's football program registered more than 676 yards, do you think?
So the only game I could think would have been
I love Caleb. He's actually going to break down the games. Yeah, he remembers them all. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if they've ever done it. I'm saying the closest I think they would have come would have been 2016, either Kentucky or Missouri, one of those two. But that's about it.
Well, it was the 5th most yards of total offense in a single game in program history. Tennessee has eclipsed 600 yards of total offense in a game 17 times in program history. 3 of those have come from during the Josh Heupel era. I guess we're already calling it an era, and we're just in the second year. But nevertheless, so it was a feel-good moment. I think everybody had a fantastic time. Everybody got out of there early. Everybody knows that Josh Heupel is under a new contract that I thought was a very wise move by him to perhaps take a little less money than he could have demanded for what Tennessee can offer. But takeaways. What do you think, Caleb? And you can check out Caleb Calhoun's takeaways on offthehooksports.com. What else stood out to you?
One of the things that really stood out, it's hilarious that we're talking about Hendon Hooker's accuracy issues, because that's the accuracy is why he ended up taking the job from Joe Milton last year. And Joe Milton did have a nice strike to Ramel Keaton, that 57-yard touchdown pass.
As the most beautiful, it was the prettiest pass I've seen all day.
Yeah, and literally the issue with Joe Milton last year was he couldn't connect on any deep ball. And I'm thinking, was that just luck, or did Joe Milton in the offseason just get a lot better on his deep ball, which at that point, that's a really good sign for the Vols next year. I mean, I'm still all in on the idea that either Taven Jackson or or Nico is going to be the starter next year, but Joe Milton will be another one of those 5th-year seniors next year. And watch out. Maybe he's not, he came back for a reason, and when he could have gone somewhere else. And it looks like Tennessee might be in decent shape if they have to go with him. Another thing that I'm going to bring up, you bring up the concern of Hooker too on the offense, and I agree. I'm not letting this go. The intermediate pass defense is awful. Say what you want, but DJ Irons he completed 32 of 44 passes for 241 yards. And yes, that's only 5.5 yards per attempt. But I mean, you complete, if every attempt goes for 5.5 yards, that's a first down every 2 plays. So I know what you say about now in today's game of college football, the defense moves the ball a little bit, a lot, or the defense allows a lot more yards, and it's more about bend but don't break and things like that. And I do understand that. I do say it's concerning though if you let that happen when you're facing Akron.
Great point. Yeah, I don't like it. Trust me, I was the guy who liked the 23-24 to 17 type of game, but those are just almost gone. And as far as Tennessee, you had Jabari Small come out, and it was obvious that Tennessee wanted to establish the running game early. They always do. And he has an 11-yard run, and then it looks like a right shoulder knocks him out of the game. And he looked fine. He was working out the shoulder on the recumbent bike. So I don't think that's any big concern. It did open up some opportunities for Dylan Sampson, who I thought really took advantage of those. I was incredibly impressed with him. I love that little speed option. They ran it twice on 4th down. You would think if you're Akron, you would know that's coming, but we know that Hooker can keep as well. So on that read, they completely were all about stopping Hooker and not the pitch. And I just thought that's a really slick play, and I like Sampson's speed on that a lot.
Yeah, and it actually shocked me because we talked about it, I guess, 2 weeks ago about how Heupel doesn't usually like to run, even though he runs tempo and a spread, he doesn't run a lot of gimmicky plays, but that was more of a nice little option play thrown in. Dylan Sampson was one of the 3 guys I mentioned that kind of had breakout games. Dylan Sampson, because we'd heard, and they had breakout games for different reasons. Dylan Sampson, we heard a lot of talk about him in fall camp and didn't see much of him through the first 2 games. He had a nice showing in this one. I think he had 2 touchdowns, 57 yards, 8 carries. And you're right, that option touchdown was pretty impressive. And then even though we've seen a good bit from him, we still had not seen yet from Jalen Hyatt everything we had heard about Jalen Hyatt. And I mean, things we'd heard about him for 2 years, dating back to January of 2021. He finally lived up to all of that talk in this game. And then I'm going to add in, he came on down the stretch a lot last year, but Jalen Wright did shoulder the load when Jabari Small went out. Akron's issue has been the power running game, and Jalen Wright's not really a power runner, but he really took on that role in this one, and taking on that role after having had fumble issues the first 2 games and being consistent, reliable on short yardage situations. Again, I'm taking that with a huge grain of salt because Akron's defensive front is not anywhere. I mean, I don't even think I think there are about 25 FCS defensive fronts that are better than Akron's. But at the same time,
I could see that. I mean, I don't think they're nearly as good as Ball State, to be real honest with you. I mean, this is as scrimmagey can get in a game. And, that's what Tennessee needs. But when you look at this entire season, as we continue to talk about the game, we'll talk more about this 8:30, as we always are there for you at 8:30 Eastern time on offthehooksports.com. But it really seems like things are breaking Tennessee's way in a number of different ways. The schedule is very doable. You look at some of the other teams in the SEC, and you've got Florida just now has, so if you're watching this live, it's a final. They were able to survive South Florida 31-28. So that's who Tennessee plays next. So I want to get your thoughts on that. I know we were focused on the Tennessee game, but Florida to struggle at home against South Florida, I think it means they're very much in a transition phase. And if at SEC Media Days, if I heard Billy Napier's a detail-oriented guy. One time I heard it 1,000,000 times, and he might be. And he might be the next Nick Saban. He might turn things around, or Kirby Smart, or whoever the case may be. But there's a lot of times where it takes a full year to turn a program around and its culture. And I think that right now they're in the middle of that. So Tennessee catches them next week, I believe, at a perfect time. And I think the Vols will be favored. You're more the gambling guy. I think you said you went 8-0 right before we went on the air. And I think that Tennessee might be favored by 5.5, maybe 6 points. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you are. And the real question is, would that be the biggest line in Tennessee's favor against Florida since they started playing annually in 1990?
It seems like there was a Dooley year they were 5.5. Am I wrong on that?
2012, maybe. There was that 2012 year where Will Muschamp came to town. You might be right about that. I'll have to go back and look.
It seems like they were really close to a touchdown favorite at one point. But yeah, I look at Tennessee's wide receivers, and you get Squirrel White involved. The guys I wanted to see before the game, you read my column on Friday. I wanted to see Dylan Sampson. I wanted to see Squirrel White. I want to see Justin Williams-Thomas. There were a couple other guys that I threw in there. But really, if you held the gun to my head, the two people I wanted to see most were Squirrel White and Dylan Sampson. I wanted to see more of those guys, and we did that. Squirrel White not only caught the 47-yard pass, and but he also nearly broke a punt return for a touchdown. I just think that kid's special good. And I've heard that from Tennessee's camp as well. And I think he's going to be a factor. If there's one guy that I wonder if Tennessee's kind of holding back for the Florida game, not that you would against Pitt, but that is on the road, and that is a true freshman, it would make sense to let him get his sea legs, and maybe he plays a big role in the Florida game. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, no, and actually, to add to that, there might be a greater need for him because behind Jalen Hyatt in the slot, I think Tennessee is going to be without Jimmy Callaway for a few weeks.
What in the world was that all about? I don't think in 40 years of watching football, I have seen somebody manage to get off 4 haymakers before they can get separated. What in the world happened there?
I don't know. And I've never seen someone that mad when they were winning, whatever the score was. Like, the broadcasters brought up Cortland Finnegan and Andre Johnson, but like I think I remember that year as someone who follows the Titans a lot, and that was Cortland Finnegan letting off just a whole year's worth of frustration. That was the year that was 2010 when the Vince Young, Jeff Fisher era was coming undone, and Cortland Finnegan was just frustrated and just went off. And so,
you know what it reminded me of? This might be before your time. Andre Rison coming off the line and slapping Deion Sanders. But Deion Sanders swung back. The poor kid for Akron, I think he may have gotten one little blow in, but I don't know what he was thinking there. I don't know why he did that. It was one of the more bizarre plays I've seen. I did give the offensive line a B. Jump in here, Caleb, if you have any disagreements. There was a bad snap at one point. The Vols did average 6.6 yards per carry, allowed 1 sack. Again, I say that's against Akron, so it's kind of graded on a curve. The defensive line, Byron Young forced a 3 and out, had a key quarterback pressure on the first drive. Tyler Barron called for a questionable penalty in the second half for roughing the passer. I do want to go back to what you said earlier with Brew McCoy. I didn't think, along with the Tyler Barron roughing the passer, I didn't think any of the 3 of those were actually penalties. I thought Tennessee, it's easy to say after a loss the officials were against you. I really thought the officials, not purposefully, not with intent, but I thought they made some bad calls that hurt Tennessee tonight with those 3 penalties in particular.
Yeah, well, with Brew McCoy, like, if you watch him, and I watched this a lot with him the week before at Pittsburgh, he plays a little bit with fire. And I don't mean like plays with, I don't mean like he does play tough. I mean, he just toes the line on penalties a lot of times. Even that penalty last week with Pittsburgh where he was he was pushed out of bounds and came back in, and Pat Narduzzi complained about that in the halftime interview. But it was so like it was just a very light touch, and he knew to kind of take advantage of that by going out of bounds and coming in. And I mean, you could call it smart play, but you're right. I actually thought those were a little bit questionable too. I'm not going to go as far as to say they weren't penalties, only because I think this is more of it may be a reputation thing at this point that Brew McCoy is just starting to play just very close to the line with a lot of things, not like dirty or anything like that. Kind of like the NBA player that draws a lot of fouls under the basket, but they may flop a lot, so they may not get the calls towards the future.
Yeah, Danny saying, how about Squirrel's return on the punt? Yeah, that was squirrely. That was pretty good. I was again, I've heard from a lot of people over on campus that he's the real deal. So I was surprised he didn't play a bigger role at Pitt in some shape, form, or fashion. I think he does play a big role. And I think that as we talked about Caleb last week, I think the top 3 receivers are set, and Hyatt, Tillman, and McCoy. But you can have special packages for Squirrel White. You can have 5 plays a game that he can excel in. And I'm not sure I wouldn't have him. I mean, I like Trayvon Flowers. He did have the fumble against Pitt, but I think Squirrel White brings you more as far as explosiveness from the punt return. Now, that's eyeball test, and that gets me in trouble a lot. What do you think?
No, I fully agree with you. I didn't think Trayvon Flowers was good last year returning punts. He didn't fumble a punt like he did against Pittsburgh, so I'm not using that as a standard, but just he's never been that explosive of a playmaker. And I think Squirrel White and Jimmy Holiday, don't quote me on this, but if you were to say like the 4 fastest players on the team, they would be in that top 4, Squirrel White and Jimmy Holiday. That's my guess. I'm positive about Squirrel White, and I'm pretty sure about Jimmy Holiday, and Holiday's the one who returns the kickoffs. I think it just logically makes sense to have Squirrel White on the punts at that point. I was kind of shocked they didn't have it earlier.
I want you to Danny's on board. Hooker did much better after that big hit. We'll get to that. I think he needs to get hit every game. I think it changes him this season for some reason. Maybe he's too high or whatever, too excited. But I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We'd greatly appreciate it so we can be with you after each and every Tennessee game. And best of all, Danny, I'm going to ask you this since you're on board. Hit that share. Share. We appreciate that. So Danny also saying we have lots of good receivers. And Caleb, if you look at the rest of the SEC this week and after what we've seen, and we have a better sample size with each week that moves on. Arkansas, who I like more than most, struggled for a bit against Missouri State, 38-27. So at one point that game, Missouri State actually led in the second half. Tennessee very well could be, and you might see a column about this on offthehooksports.com. Tennessee, based off what they've done so far this year, could easily be the 3rd best team in the SEC, and that's saying something.
Yeah, that's very true. There's still there's obviously Alabama and Georgia. You're right. I think as far as who's earned it over them, I would say at this moment, there's probably a better case for Kentucky. But you're right. I mean, you take Kentucky, you take Arkansas, you could look at Tennessee, and you look. I mean, they have a Power 5 win, just like Arkansas and Kentucky do, and you say, why isn't Tennessee? Why shouldn't we say Tennessee may be better than those teams, particularly since Tennessee beat Kentucky last year? Arkansas, that situation was so unique with Bobby Petrino coming back to town, and Missouri State being that I think they're a top 5 team in FCS play. They've been really good. They beat UT Martin the week before, who is going to play Tennessee later in the year. And I said, funny enough, earlier this week that UT Martin is better than Akron. I'm telling you right now, if you put UT Martin and Akron on a field together, I think UT Martin wins by about 2 touchdowns, maybe 3.
I'm not going to go 3, but how about I go 10 points and I meet you somewhere in the middle? I do think they win. I do think they win decisively. I'll tell you that. Akron's just a bad football team. Probably perfect timing for the Vols.
Mm-hmm.
So again, hit that subscribe button, the like and subscribe button, and share. We certainly appreciate that. So Florida week is officially upon us. Any other takeaways from this game before we talk about the Gators for a couple of minutes and get more things up on offthehooksports.com?
Mostly, I would say that I think you see a little bit of a better sign with Tennessee's depth. It's a good thing for them that in this game, the biggest thing that stands out is you were right about the clean performance. I talked about the penalties, but not turning the ball over in this game. Again, I know it was Akron, but there were those 2 fumbles last week. And the week before, when mop up duty came, there were a couple of turnovers. There was none in this one. And hey, just one last bit. Taven Jackson came in, completed both of his pass attempts, and ran for a touchdown.
Hey, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is the way things work, because I know a lot of people in the TV biz. So they will meet with the coaches before the game and get a little bit of inside skinny. Okay. I don't know if I usually turn the TV down because sometimes I think that the announcers, I might subconsciously steal something and put it in my column that they said, like a line or a throwaway line. But I did have it up, and they mentioned Jackson several times as look out, look out. And it almost felt like there had been a conversation. I'm speculating between the announcers and Tennessee's coaching staff, in particular Josh Heupel, in a production meeting, and they spoke very highly of Taven Jackson. Yeah, that's what it felt like to me. Actually, it was glaring to me. So I wonder how much they like Jackson. I know everybody just expects Nico to walk in and take over, and he probably will at some point. But you've been on the Jackson bandwagon all along. This kid's not chopped liver by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he was Heupel's first splash commitment when Heupel took over. And so, watch out for him. I'm not ready to completely write him off. I just like last year, I wasn't ready to write Hendon Hooker off. I'm going to say this. One of the other things the announcers were saying tonight was, I'm not believing what Josh Heupel says when they say that, Joe Milton really did just outperform Hooker in practice last year, and that's why he got the job. No, I think Joe Milton got the job because Josh Heupel picked Joe Milton was the one quarterback Josh Heupel signed. And so he wanted to make that case. And I'm never, ever going to not believe that.
I've found somebody that's more of a cynic than me. Trevor, injury news. Here is, you probably heard this at halftime. Josh Heupel said that he thought Jabari Small and Cedric Tillman would be fine, but they weren't going to return to the game. And then I'm sorry, who returned that we were talking about at the very beginning? Tyler Barron returned. So I think everybody's fine. And that doesn't mean they're going to be 100%. And those type of injuries happen in football. The one with Tillman really was, I think, the scariest one. But anyway, we'll see. You know how tight-lipped everybody is about injuries nowadays. So right now, let's not even worry about the spread. Way too early prediction for the Florida game. Who you taking, Caleb?
Oh, gosh. That's
it's one of those, everybody says, I'm not doing it, and I'm not picking them until they win it, and I get it, but they're going to win it at some point.
So let me say what's so hard about this, and it's not just because Tennessee loses to Florida all the time, but it's also just the history of the Tennessee-Florida series. Tennessee's honestly at its worst when they're coming in undefeated and Florida's had a loss. I still seared in my mind is that 2002 game when Florida got blown out by Miami, and then they looked horrible against Ohio. It was Ron Zook's first year, and they marched into Knoxville, and Tennessee apparently never practiced in the rain. And so,
that was the wet ball game, right?
Yes,
it was Case. Yeah.
Yes, so. Casey Clausen fumbling every snap, and so, and also with Florida, you talk about the other part that's hard about this is you're right. They're growing pains as a program, so they're up and down. But when you're up and down, there's weeks when you're up, and so they've been down the last 2 weeks, and so I would say, okay, if I'm going to be honest, fully objective, gun to my head, if I had to make a pick, I would say Tennessee is going to win. I would say it would be closer than it should be because I don't like to talk about psychological aspects and things like that, but there's just certain things when you watch college football that they exist. It existed with Alabama and Ole Miss a few years ago when Alabama struggled with Hugh Freeze and they finally were ready to win, but they did everything they could to give away the game they won. And so I don't think you can look past that. So I'd say Tennessee wins, but I'd actually say it's going to be a one-score game. And it shouldn't be.
Yep. And I guess Trevor agrees with you and then is calling you out. He says you're talking about a game that was 20 years ago, but he takes Tennessee 42-34. So he agrees and disagrees with Caleb. I think Tennessee does.
Wait, what about 5 years ago? How about 5 years ago when Florida had a loss and Butch Jones went out of his way? Like, Butch Jones invented ways to make stupid decisions that, like, I think they were inside John Kelly had the most yards of anybody in that game, the running back, and they were inside the 5-yard line, had 8 plays inside the 5-yard line, ran it once. I'm going to have to go back to 2002.
Great stuff, Caleb. We appreciate it. You can read his rapid reactions. You can also read my report card and more coming up. So, yeah, it's Tennessee appears to have avoided a serious injury. That Tillman one was the scariest one, I thought. And he was such a pleasant guy at SEC Media Days. I felt for him. But again, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be with you after each and every game. And please share. We greatly appreciate it. The response has been absolutely phenomenal. So we'll be with you with the Amanda LaFrada on Monday, and 8:30 is when we go live. So we would love for you to make plans to join us then. So like, share, subscribe, and just go ahead and put it in your phone for 8:30. It's in my phone every day, so it should be in yours. Reminds me that I've got to do a show. All right, so he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off